Hi everyone. So today we'll try to understand about the include paths which we used to mention in the deck file, right? So now maybe let's take a sample C programming as an example, right? So I will go to a online compiler, right? So here maybe I can create one header file, maybe a sample .h file, and here maybe I will define a preprocessor directory called howdo and I will initialize this to 5. Okay, and here to access this header file, I can simply have to include that path in the C file, right? So hash include sample.h, right? So let's try to print that %d although. So whatever the content which is there in this sample .h can be accessed in the main.c file, right? But this sample.h is present in the same directory as this main.c, right? So now assume if there is this path, this sample .h is coming from a different directory. So then we have to provide that absolute path here, like for example, C path, wherever that path it is coming from, right? So we have to specify that full path so that our C file can access, right? But in the EDK2, we should not provide the absolute path in any of the C files, right? So now how to address that? Right, so to address that we have this called a section headers. Okay, so now this section include, right, so this section includes will help us to provide the relative paths in the C file, right? Like for example, if I open this edk2 folder. Okay, so maybe let's open maybe a sample library safe initlib.c, right? So now this safe initlib.c, it is going to include a three header files, right? A base.h, safeintlib.h, baselib.h, right? So now ideally this base.h library slash safeint and this header file, right, should be present in the same directory, right, as where we have in our C file. But as you can see, it's not, right? So now where it is coming from, if I go to base.h, it is coming from the md package include base.h. If I go to safe init, it is coming from the md package include library safeintlib.h, right? Which means it is coming from a different directory. So now how this C file is going to access these paths, right, when it is not relative to its directory, right? So if I go back to its inf file here, section header called packages, right? So now here we have a path to our deck file. Okay, so in this case, md package.dec. So if I open this path here, here we have includes. Here we have includes.ia32, x64, EBC, ARM, and RISC v64 and the long arch 64. Right, so now what this will do, right, so it helps to provide a relative paths, right? So how it helps to provide the relative paths, right? So now if you look at this includes, right, it is going to contain a path called include, and this includes is going to have another path called the test. So where this include is coming from, this include is present directly under the md package. Okay, so if I go to md package here, right below the md package we have the include, so that's what this include is there. And then here we have the test and those test paths they have included, and similarly for the library they have included, right? So which means any library which is going to include this package, which is md package.dec, right, so they can access all the header files which is present in this section header called the includes. So then, so if this solves the purpose, then why we need to have this i32 x64 or some other architectures, right? So there are some header files which supposed to have a common name, right? So when it is supposed to have a common name, so then how we should define those, like for example, let's consider the size of uint n, right? In case of IR32, the size of the uint n is 4 bytes, whereas in x64 architecture, the size of uint n is 8 bytes, right? So now how we are going to define that? One of the best example is processor bind dot h, right? As you can see, there are 7 instances of this processor bind dot h, right? So if I go back here, so it is going to define the x64 related variables. If I go back to IR32, so it is going to define IR32 specific preprocessor directives, right? So now, if my library, if this library wants to access uh, some variables from this processor bind.h, so how we know which header file it is picking from, right? So to have that information, we need to know this library is built from which architecture. So if it is building from the x64 architecture, then this processor bind.h should be coming from the x64 folder. If I'm building the save.h in a i32 architecture, so then that processor binding.h should be coming from the i32. So how? So since both of them is going to have a similar file name, so to identify that architecture, so we are going to provide the architecture here. i32, x64, ARM, RISC-V64, AR64, right? So how I know these paths where it is coming from, right? So from theoretically, we saw that it is going to include this deck file path. This deck file is going to have these sections, and maybe it might be coming from one of these files here, right? So how can I be sure about it? So if I go to my build folder, x64, md package, and then here we have the library, and then base safe int lib, right? So where is it? Here. If I go to this deps.txt, here we have those header files. Okay. So now if I split screen, right? So here we have this base.h, right? So where this base.h is coming from? It is coming from this directory where this is a absolute path. Whereas in my C file, I'm just including the relative path to the path which is mentioned in the deck file, right? So in this case here, I've just mentioned base.h. So this is a base.h. In the deck file, we are including this line number 29, which is includes, right? So where this includes is going to take it from? It is going to take it from this directory. So what is this directory? It is C user, my name. I will show you from here, right? So this MD package is coming from C user, my name, downloads, EDK2 a demo, and this MD package, right? So that path you can see here, right? And then it is going to include this include path. So that's what this includes, right? And then it is going to have this base.h. So this is where this base.h is coming from. Similarly, here we have this library slash baselib.h. This baselib.h is coming from this directory. And as I mentioned, there is some architecture specific header files. So in this case, this library is built on the x64 architecture, and that's where this processor bind.h is coming from, which is in the x64 directory, right? So now here in this C file is not including this processor binding.h. So then where it is coming from, why it is getting included, right? So if I go back to base.h, so this base.h is internally including this processor bind.h. So that's why this library is dependent on these many header files. Okay, and you can see there is one autogen, which is a compiler is going to create this autogen.h, where this compiler will include that path as well. Okay, so now this is how we used to provide the relative paths to the header file to the its package. Okay, so now we have explored this includes, we have explored this architecture, right? So now let's try to understand about this common. Okay, again I will go back to this text file, and here if I do this includes dot common, still it's the same because so specifying the just the includes or includes.common will make sure it is available for all the architecture. Okay. Then now there are some header files which I don't want to expose outside of this MD package. Which means let's take one of the header file, right? Maybe I'll go to MD package, right? Maybe let's go to first emulator package dot fdf, and here let's open this Dixie IPL as an example, right? So this Dixie IPL, okay, so yeah, sorry, my bad. So before we go to that, right? So let's try to practically see by creating one header file, right? So here in the safe int, maybe I will go to this include directory. Okay, so in the include, maybe I'm going to create a folder called howdo. Okay, and here I will create another file called howdo public.h. Okay, and this howdo public.h. So probably let's try to copy some content from here. Okay, so now this license, let's strip off. Okay, and here howdo public.h. If it is not defined, then we are going to define it. And maybe let's define a variable preprocessor directory howdo as 5. Okay, so now if this safelib.h wants to access this public, right? So now in this deck file, we have already included a path of this include, right? So now here I can have like the folder name, which is howdo. In that howdo folder, I have the howdo public.h, right? So now let's try to access that variable here, maybe in one of the place here, right? So if 5, right? So then let's try to set this result as null. Okay. So now before I build, let's go back to that depths file right here. So currently it is including the 5 paths, right? So now let's try to build it. I'll open the command prompt here. I will run the edk setup.bat, and by default it is going to take my x64, and I will do build. Okay, so okay, let me maximize a bit. Okay, so I will do this bld command. Hit enter. Okay, so let's wait for a moment. Okay, so now here, if I go back to this, you can see now it is taking this how the public.h, right? Earlier, this how the public was not there, but now it is coming. Why it is coming? Because we have used this how the public.h in this C file, right? So now here I'm just specifying how the slash how the public, right? But how this compiler is picking this complete absolute path to this header file? Because of this deck file, right? So from the deck file, this is a path for this deck. And then in the deck, we have the includes. In the includes, we have the include. And then here I'm specifying how the slash how the public, right? So now suppose I don't want to I don't want the other drivers to be including this folder called howdo, right? So then what I should do here, I will do include slash howdo, right? So now, so since I have provided the path for this howdo here in the C file, I don't have to specify that folder name here. Okay. So now let's try to build it again. Let's wait for a moment. Okay. So now if I go back to this depths, right? Still you can see it is still taking from this, right? Because include slash how the path we have already specified in the deck file. So it will directly go to this deck file and it will find this, right? So now assume in this deck file, now this time I'm going to remove this path. Okay. So now it will try to find this how the public.h, right? So now, okay, now let's build it again. Now this time it should throw the error. Okay. So why it will throw the error? Any guess? It's because this how the public.h, it may not able to find it, right? So as we suspected here, you can see in this safeintlib.c in the line number 15, it will try to find this how the public.h, which is it the tool is not able to find that header file. Why it is not able to find that header file? Because as soon as it saw this how the public.h, it will go to its inf file, and here it found this deck file. It will go to its deck file and it will try to find this section header called the includes. In this includes, here we have the list of the paths. So first it will check directly under the include folder, do we have the other public.h? So in this case, we don't have. Then it will go to here, here also we don't have. Then it will go here, here also we don't have. Then it will go here, here also we don't have. Then this will get skipped because we are not building the IO32. So now it will go here and here also we don't have, right? So where we have that how the, it is present inside that how the folder, right? Now if I move this how the public directly under the include folder, right? So now I can, now if I try to build it, it will build. Okay, let's wait for a moment. It's building, right? So if I go back to this steps, here you can see directly under the include, this time it is able to find this how the public.h. Got it? So now you understood about this includes, right? So now let's go back to the common. Common also, as I told, includes dot common versus includes both do the same thing. Both are available for all the architecture. Okay. So now there are some header files where I don't want to access those header files outside of the package. Okay. Like for example, maybe here I'm going to create another folder in the MD package, include private. Okay, so here I have already created this include private path. Inside this, I'm going to create a file called sample header.h. Okay, so in this sample header.h, let's try to create. Okay, sample underscore data is equal to 5. Okay, so now this sample data I want to access, or I want to allow the access within this MD package, but outside of this MD package, I don't want to allow to access this header file, right? Like for example, first let's try to access this sample, right? So now this is present in the include private, right? So we have to, this path is not there. So here I can access that path like hash include slash include private slash that header file, right? So I can do that. Okay. But instead of doing that, I'm going now this time I'm going to have something kind of dot common dot private, and here I'm going to provide the path of that folder name which is include private. Okay. So now here I can directly access that header file, include sample header, and this variable sample data, let's try to access it. If sample data result is equal to null. Okay. So now let's try to build it. Okay, so it's building. Now if I go back to this steps, still it is not built it. We'll wait. Okay, now you can see here we have this sample header.h, and it is coming from the include private path of this one. Okay, so now this sample header can be so since we have this path here, right? So this sample header can be accessed anywhere, right? But this is under the dot private, right? So now let's take one of the example called this Dixie load, right? So in the Dixie load, maybe somewhere here, I will use the same thing here. What I used here. Okay. If sample data is equal to 5, result is equal to null. Okay. And I have to include that header file name as well, right? So let's include that. Okay. So I just copy pasted from the safe int to here, right? So now is it going to build? Let's see. So I will save this, and we'll see this INF file as well, whether we have the path for the DEC file. Yes, we have. Okay. So now, okay, now let's try to build it. Okay. So now what it is happening, it is trying to access this MD module package, which is a different package. It is trying to access a private member of a private header of this MD package, right? Even though the path is exist in the deck file, ideally it should be accessed, but to prevent that access, we have this called private. Okay, so now here you can see we got an error. Okay, so maybe let's clear the screen. Let's redirect to a build.log. Okay, so all those logs will be stored in this build.log so that it from this log file it is be easier to search where the error is coming from. Okay, why? Hello world. Okay, okay, let's do one thing. Let's delete, or maybe let's rename this build folder. Let's allow the compiler to rebuild everything. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, it started building. We'll wait for a moment. Meanwhile, we can see these steps. Still, this sample header.h is available. And meanwhile, we'll try to find this build x64 MD model package, and which is the driver name, which is under the core. Okay, MD package, MD model package, core, and then Dixie IPL PIM. And here we have the steps. So it is not yet generated. Okay, let's wait. Is it not yet? Okay. We'll wait. I think we should have considered the PI module. Should be fine. Okay, so we got the error in the Dixie IPL. Okay, so now what is that error? Let's try to search for error. Okay, so now when I search for a keyword called error, here you can see in this Dixie load.c file, line number 12. So what is that line number 12? It's a sample header.h. Okay, so the sample header.h, it is trying to find a path, right? So this path of this sample header.h. Okay, so this sample header.h, it is not able to find by this C file, but the same header file, it is able to this safe init can able to find it. Okay, why? Because it is within this MD package. Okay, this C file is in the MD package, and this Dixie load is outside of this MD package. So which means the sample header cannot be accessed outside of this MD package because these are private header files. Okay, so uh, how the tools know that it is private, right? So let's go back to its deck file. Let's close everything. First, to identify this path, right? First, it will go to its INF file, and here it is able to find two header files. So two packages, right? So first is this one. First, we'll go here. Okay. So now, so what is the INF file package? This INF file belongs to, it belongs to MD package. Okay. So now, first in this INF file, we have this MD package.dec, and here it finds this includes here. So in directly under the include, whether do we have that sample header.h? We don't have. And then, so it's a private, right? So since is my current package which I'm building, is it MD package? No, this current package is MD module package. So this will get skipped. Am I building the i32 architecture? No, this will get skipped. Am I building the x64 architecture? Yes. So and so it will try to go and to this path. Under the includes, it will go to x64. And here do we have that sample header.h, which is this one? No, we don't have here. Okay. Are we building the CBC? No. Are we building ARM? No. Are we building a RISC-V? Or no. Are we building this long arch? No. Okay. So now next it will go to this MD package.dec. Okay. So now here, so it will check this include path. So this include is coming within this MD package directory, right? So under the directly under the include, do we have that sample header? No. Next is test mock include. So here test mock include. Do we have that sample header? No, right? So now it will go here. Is this a private? So it's a private. I'm a building. Is my current driver which I'm building? Is this a MD package? Yes. So it will go to this directory as well. So it will go to library, and then it will go to compress broadly C, and then it will go to includes. Do we have that sample header.h? No. So then in none of the path, it is not able to find the sample header.h. So the builds were failing. Okay, because here I'm explicitly marking whatever the content which is in this include private should not be accessed outside of this MD package. Okay, so what if I remove this private here? Okay, so now if I try to build it, so this time the build will pass because it's a public one and it is available for the all the architecture. Okay, so even though this path name specifies as a private, but the section header, it does not say as a private now because I have removed the keyword called the private here. Okay, so now let's see. Let's wait for a moment. Let's see whether that deps.inf, deps.txt, which we used to see, right? Is it generated? Not yet. So still that module is not builded. We'll wait. Okay, we'll wait. Still not yet. Okay, still we got the error. Okay, let's see what is that error. Build.log. Okay, so here now our regular C error we got. Okay, so let's see. Oh, result we don't have anything, right? That's the reason. Okay, so status is equal to EFI underscore aborted. Okay, so now build it. Earlier, as you can see, that error did not came because before it compiled the C program itself, it was failed because of the inclusion of the header file path problem. Okay, so now let's see. Yeah, so now here looks like that. Okay, so as you can see, the build got completed. So now what is the header file our Dixie load is trying to find? sample header. Is this sample header is available here? Yes, it is. Right. So even though the path name it specifies as a private in the package, in a section header, we are not specifying this as a dot private. That's the reason the other modules can access. So if I specify this as a dot private, then the other packages may not, the other packages are not able to access this include private path. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you.